We are back on Morning Line. Thanks for joining us, talking this morning about domestic violence. It's Domestic Violence Awareness Month. See, it's written up there on the screen and right underneath the phone number. If you want to join us, Sharon Roberson is with us this morning. She is the president and CEO of the YWCA here in Middle Tennessee. I really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you.
Worthwhile talking about. And we were talking during the break about the most dangerous time.
Yes.
Again, that is the moment a victim decides to leave, right?
Yes. And what it is, as we've discussed before, we're looking at someone having power over another person. And when you leave, I would advise anyone, if they are determined that they want to leave a domestic violence situation, to call our crisis line and develop a safety plan, because there are safe ways in order to leave. You cannot leave a domestic violence situation without keeping yourself safe. That safety plan may include your children, your pets. You may have to have, either clothing, emergency situation, some place to go that you will be safe, because the most dangerous time for a victim of domestic violence as far as homicide is when you decide to leave. That
they realize they've lost control and they're like, if that's the case, I'm just going to kill you.
Correct.
All right, so I understand coming up with a plan, and I know it's going to vary depending on the situation, but can you give me a typical idea? We put the number up there right now, and that's where you can call to get some of this information. But let's say a woman calls, says, I have a couple of small children, I'm at my wit's end, I was beaten up last night, there's been months of verbal abuse, I'm ready to go. What type of information will she get on that line?
When she makes that call, our crisis counselors, who are well trained, very well educated, will go step by step given their specific situation and discuss, how to get resources, financial, where to go, family resources. They'll really talk you through a series of questions, determine a really specific plan for you.
Now, will that plan include, all right, you've made this call, you're there, this woman wants to leave now?
If she wants to leave then, and she doesn't have other resources, that's when you might want to come into our domestic violence shelter.
Okay. And
we work out, ways of getting you there in a safe way.
But the idea is, if she's making this phone call, it's probably happening at a time when he's not home.
Correct.
All right, so she's making the call. She maybe knows his schedule. He's not going to be home from work for another 5 hours. And so at that point, then maybe you gather up what you can. You take the vehicle,
if
financials,
you can, if you have those resources. It really is specific to the person. It's customized, so to speak, to the person.
Sure, and sometimes maybe
because some people have resources and they just need to know how to take care of the children, what to do. A lot of people have questions about their children, and there are ways that their children can stay in their schools if that's safe for them, that they've been going to, or they can work out a program that Metro has that allows them to go to the school in other districts. So we work to keep the children safe. It's very important.
A lot of times, it seems to me, sometimes they live with it, obviously, and they don't respond. What about someone who lives in a neighborhood and observes an abusive situation? I once was house sitting for a friend, a buddy and I, and we heard just a ruckus going on next door, big time ruckus, and it sounded like it was getting violent. We called the police.
Yes.
Anonymously, we called the police, 911. We think there's a domestic violence situation going on. Police officers showed up, okay, and the woman was saying, no, he hasn't done anything. It looked bad, and in front of the cop, the guy punched her in the face. See ya! They took him away, but the police can only do so much, and she was saying, no, I'm okay. And we were sitting here watching through the window, and we saw he punched her in the face in front of the officer, which was all they needed. But I mean, so what do you recommend for folks? I mean, I have no doubt we did the right thing. I hear it, I'm calling it in, I'm going to bust you. I'm going to report it. So what about people reporting things? And you can do so anonymously. I mean, they didn't know that we called.
The most important thing is, one, you have to make sure you keep yourself safe. It's very dangerous, even for a police officer, when they have to physically intervene into a situation. So you did the exact right thing. If you see something, say something. Make that 911 call. Fortunately, now in Nashville, we have what's called the lethality assessment program. And so in Nashville, what a police officer would do in that circumstance, when they show up for a domestic violence call, they will separate the parties. They will ask, now that female is typically a female, they will ask her a series of 13 questions to sort of get her mind level set. Right now she's saying, I don't want to do anything, but when you ask her those questions, she may start thinking about her situation in more broad terms. And based on her responses, that police officer can say, based on your responses to these voluntarily asked questions, you may be in danger down the road, lethal danger to lose your life. Do you want to talk to someone? And now we're seeing, of course, our calls have skyrocketed, but we are keeping people safe. And then she can talk to someone right on the spot at our crisis line and talk about her situation.
Doesn't mean they would arrest right off the bat there necessarily. Okay.
Correct. It may not mean that anything changes as far as the dynamics of it, well, we're going to go away, but she will be given the opportunity to think more clearly about her situation and hopefully prevent a homicide in the future.
Will there also be questions of the male?
Not at this point. Not at this point.
Okay, so that assessment is basically these officers, and these questions have been thought through, obviously.
Correct.
And based on those responses, they'll know, all right, this puts her at risk, or maybe this isn't to the level right now where
But it gives that sort of time because the police officers actually have had such positive feedback from the police officers. And the reason for that is they would often go on these calls. They knew this situation was dangerous. They would give a card with the YW number or something like that, but they felt like they weren't doing enough for these victims. They felt as though that, we're leaving this woman and she could be harmed in the future. So it really is a gift to the police force to give them a tool to use to better support the community.
I think it's wonderful. How long ago did they start using it?
About a year and a half.
ago. And it's something that YWCA was involved with?
Yes. We trained all the officers.
What a great idea. I just think that's fantastic. Let's go to, we've got a call from Lonnie. Lonnie, good morning. Hi, Lonnie.
Hello.
Hey, what's on your mind, sir?
Yeah, it's about, domestic violence, okay? They say it's always the man and stuff or the woman. What if it's, say she's handicapped by mentally, and anybody asks her a question, she'll agree to it whether it's right or wrong. How do you deal with that?
Meaning if someone wants to take advantage of her knowing that she's going to agree to everything?
Like somebody could come out here and say, did your husband do this or did your husband do that?
Oh, okay. Leading questions, maybe getting it more than it is. All right, fair enough. And again, we didn't say domestic violence is always man on woman. It is in, far fewer cases. Sometimes males can be the battered victims. What about the idea that maybe false claims are being made, or how do you determine, because all a woman needs to do is say, and I think it's very rare, but all she has to do is say, oh well, he punched me, and she can, I've done criminal cases where someone has claimed that she was abused, and it turned out later that she did that to herself, trying to really hammer this guy because she was so mad at him. Now again, I think that's very rare, but when it happens, it gives all the legitimate cases a bad name because, well, how do you know?
Yeah, certainly you're right. In this particular case, I think what he's saying is that this didn't really happen, but she has a mental capacity such as being suggested. And I will say this. You hear it all the time about the false claims, but it is extremely rare for there to be a false claim. And so even though we cannot say this claim was not false, I think that the police officers are savvy enough and the system is savvy enough to look at the totality of the circumstances. And if it's a false claim, it will come to light, but that is extraordinarily rare.
Okay, right. Fair question, but I agree. Very, very rare. And the truth is, you file a false claim, that person is going to face criminal charges for filing a false police report. But yeah, in your experience, I would imagine
that's very rare.
Extraordinarily rare that something like that comes up with. But again, you always wonder then, how do you prove how do you prove, especially when it's the mental abuse, which, as you've said, can be just as horrible. If someone's saying, I'm just tired, not that it would, a lot of these cases, by the way, when they leave, no criminal charges have been filed.
Correct.
They're just leaving because they've had enough. And so if they're leaving, then I'm gonna believe what they're telling me.
Yes. Because you have to look at what would drive a person to totally turn their lives upside down to leave. You have to look at all the facts, and we always say, I'm a lawyer by background, the totality of the facts. And I think that will really lead you to a truthful realization that it's extraordinarily rare to have a false accusation, but certainly they do occur, but it's extraordinarily rare.
Everyone's going to have that different line of when enough is enough, I suppose. What would you say to a woman perhaps who's watching today who maybe is not, wonders, is it bad enough for me to go? And they may ask themselves that. They may not like it, but they may think, well, I've got my children here. How what questions should they ask themselves to determine whether or not they think they should leave?
I think that what they would have to do is look at why they're asking themselves that question.
Right.
You know, if you're asking yourself that question, that should really be your first clue. What I would say is actually talk to a trained person, and even a family member, because often family members want to give you advice and say that's not that bad, but family members are not really trained. Family members should be just that. Your support, your family, non-judgmental. I'm here if you need me. At most, if they have a safe computer that you can look up information and your computer's not safe, just be a friend, but you're not the person that really can give them advice on whether or not they should leave. That should be a trained person that can look objectively at what's going on and tell you whether, and really guide you to make your own plan.
Yeah, and I wonder, does the abuse start small and then escalate? Or
it can, but you know, at a recent event at the Nashville Coalition Against Domestic Violence, they have a memorial service for those who have been killed as a result of domestic violence, and it was last Saturday. There was a woman that was actually killed by an abuser that she'd only known 3 weeks. So things can escalate fast. It all depends on if that person, you know, for whatever reason, wants that relationship. But I think that's atypical, but it can happen fast.
Okay, because you hear about, you know, a couple that gets married, and it's great, like you said, at that period, and then with time, things all of a sudden, the side of him she didn't see comes out. Maybe drugs or alcohol become more in play. I don't know if drinking is a factor in some of this.
Well, I will say that is no excuse, of course, but often
then it brings it out.
You'll see that in these relationships. You will see that.
Okay, and so then it starts.
But it should not be used as an excuse.
No, I'm just thinking that maybe the drinking then is a trigger.
There's a trigger. We actually, in one of the trainings that I was part of, that was talking about, you know, why are people batterers? And the one thing that was in common, even beyond any sort of socioeconomics, is really sort of this economics, that traditional role is I'm the man, I'm the provider for the family, and whether or not you think you didn't get the promotion, whether or not you're even a surgeon and you don't feel as though you get the respect, there's some sort of psychological attachment to that sort of job or economics that really leads the person to being, that's a consistent thread throughout
matches up with all these cases. Well, and you're right. And well, by the way, we can just say this up front. There is absolutely no excuse for domestic violence.
Correct.
Period. Drinking, otherwise, you can't come up with one. There is no excuse for that. Period. No argument, no debate. Let's not even talk about it. We'll take a break. When we come back, Wanda and others are on the line. We'll take some phone calls and continue our conversation right after this. Stay with us.
This one.